Hey, it's Ben's from launchflows.com. I had a great question from Dan Diezo, a fan and a customer of ours, about how did we do some of the effects on the new site using Gutenberg, and in this case, Cadence. Now, previously, Launchflows and my many other sites were done with Elementor, but I improved it and I went ahead and did all of the same stuff, pixel for pixel. The thing is, I remember making a video, but I can't find it anymore. So he specifically wanted to know, how did I do the effect where I have these product images rotated? And it's really simple. There is a little CSS required, or at least there was when I made this. So I'm going to crank out my handy inspector for Chrome. And for doing this, many of you have seen in the past, the tool is quite easy even for the uninitiated. I'm using the CSS property known as transform. And to do this or show you, I click on the inspector tool and I go to the image. And then I verify that I'm at where I need to be. And on the right side, you can see now the property. I have two classes that I wrote. There's two taxonomies in CSS generally. There's classes and IDs. IDs are like big picture things, like for elements. Classes are reusable typically, and they're more like adjectives. They describe something that I can do on any number of other elements, but it does something like specific. In this case, I made a class called rotate-left image, and I made another one called rotate-right image. Now, what do they do? We are using the transform property, specifically known as rotate. So I'm going to take this CSS and I'm going to give it to everybody. There's also something in here called a z-index. Now, a z-index is like the layer of bread. A higher z-index is closer to the visual of the person. Lower or negative will be stacked below. So if you had items that might conflict, you want to make sure that the thing you want on top is a higher number. The rotate is degrees. So watch what happens. Do, 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 do. It's fun, right? I can do this all day long. All right, all kidding aside, I put in a rotation, in that case, of 5 degrees, and that was a little bit to the right. Notice if I went to the left, it'd be negative. So right, left, okay. Width. Now, I had a default image inside of this inner column, inside of a figure, but you don't have to worry about that. All you need to worry about is that width allows you to take the image itself and make it slightly smaller. So for example, maybe I want it a little bigger, a little smaller. Pretty cool, right? I also added a filter for brightness. Now you don't have to do this one, but this is pretty cool because this is very similar to the slider controls. I can adjust the brightness and the saturation. So if I took this, you notice how it's affecting the color. The blur is how far that shadow goes out. Well, actually, in this case, it's the image it's applying to. That's actually a neat one. I don't know if that's supported in all browsers, but I like this one. It's like, oh, it's been a long night. I'm going to set it back to 0. And then you've even got things like hue rotation and so forth. Border radius is the curve around, obviously, each of these corners, right? So I could lock them together, but that's the top. It always goes top, right, bottom, left. So top, right, bottom. You can kind of see the corners. Now, when you do that, you have to make sure that you don't cut off the content. So you might have to put more padding inside to make the stuff farther away from the edges. Box shadow is what's doing this outer thing. And then it's 4 variables plus the color. So again, this is x-axis, y-axis. This is, I believe, blur. And I forget now which one this one is. That's, you know what, I forgot now. I'm going from memory, but x, y, I think this is distance, and this is blur, right? Distance is how far away the shadow is. It might be blur. No, it's blur and then it's distance. And so, for example, like if I make this 0, and I'll go make this one like a crazy number, 10, and let's set the blur to 5. And by the way, let's look it up. CSS box shadow properties. Let's look at the CSS rules. So it is horizontal offset, vertical offset, blur, oh, and then spread. And the spread is the radius. The blur is how much blur there is. And then finally, there's the color. All right, so I had fun with that one. And then margin top was just, I felt like it needed to move up or down. See how that's working? And so basically what I did is I created inside of Cadence my layout, and then I applied the class to the particular image. So in this case, this is a rotate right one. Here's the image, and then under advanced, rotate right is the class. So now that CSS rule that I have will apply to this one. And on the left ones, I applied the left class. Now the CSS has to live somewhere. So in this case, I just put that in my main style sheet using Cadence under the main Cadence additional CSS option box in the customizer. Now you can also store that in a child theme if you wanted. I just happened to use the new model instead of a child theme is to use the standard parent theme and then save stuff in the customizer settings, which is JSON, or to use snippets. You could always use the old-fashioned way of doing a child theme as well. And that's it. And now if you've never done, by the way, the copy part, make sure that you use the brackets top and bottom. So for example, I kind of still like to hold my left mouse button down and then right click and copy, but you can also just right click and say copy rule. Either way, you're going to end up with something that you're going to paste. Just put some. You can end up something you're going to paste into your style sheet that looks like that. Make sure it's in style brackets or use one of the CSS rule holders like the one available in the Cadence theme. I hope this helps Dan. I hope it helps you. I hope you enjoy CSS as an adjunct to what you can do with the WYSIWYG editor, because I'm pretty sure that the controls I just applied are not yet available in WYSIWYG, nor should they be, because there are so many cool things that ordinary people can do with CSS. I encourage you or anyone else to just play around with it. Have fun learning on any of the sites like the w3schools.com or CSS Tricks. This is Spence. I'll see you in the next video.